This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Good morning. How's everybody doing? We're now Agun Chodesh. Today, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, we are learning a very important Siman. Siman Hey, where the Mechaber said that one should be mechavein when they make brachos. The meaning of the words, when you say Hashem's name, you should be mechavein the meaning of the name, the way it's read, b'shem adnos, and the way it's spelled, b'shem havaya. Now that's a big job, because we mention Hashem's name many, many times when we make brachos. And according to the Shulchan Aruch, he seems to say that each time you say Hashem's name, you should think, Adoin Koil Hayahay V'Viyah. When you say Elokim, Takif Bal Hayacholas Ubal HaKoiches Kulam. Now Rav Shlomo Zalman points out that this is not found in the Gemara. Nowhere does the Gemara say that when you say the name of God, you should think about both meanings of His name. In fact, nowhere does the Gemara say you should think of any meanings of Hashem's name. The Berura says it's based on the Gemara Brachas Daf Mem Zayin. Don't throw the brachas out of your mouth. And we read yesterday from the Sefer Chasidim and Siman Mem Vav that you should contemplate the significance and importance of each word, and if one does not say brachos with intent, and rather says it by rote, it actually elicits the anger of Hashem. But nowhere in the Gemara does it say one should be mechavein the meaning of the Shem Hashem, but this is what the Mechaber is saying, and it's based on the Torah. Let's see Mishnah Berura Sivkatan Beis. Kriyasei ba'adnos. Ki Hashem ha'nichbad va'anoira asur l'kroisei kichsavai. The honorable and awesome name of God is prohibited to read it the way it's spelled. K'may she'amru Chazal, ha'hoiges Hashem ba'usiyosav ein lo cheg l'maba. One who says God's names the way it's written loses his share in the world to come. Now, what about to say Yud and the K, Vav, K, and to say it instead of a K, you say a Hey? The Dirshu brings from the Kaf HaChaim, the name of the Ari and the Radvaz, that's also Hoiges Hashem ba'usiyosav, and it's Asar. That's why we say Yud K, Vav, K. To say the Shem Adnos, like the way the Svardim do, the Kaf HaChaim says the name of the Radvaz, you don't have to be so machmer. What about to think about the meaning of the Shem? What about to think the Shem Havaya, the way it's written? So we already saw the Mishnah Berura says you should picture the Shem Havaya, Benikud Yira. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berura continues. You have to read it as if it was written, Aleph Dal Yud. By the way, there's a famous Brisker Rav who says it's not a Kri Ksiv. In other words, when you see the Shem Havaya, it's not a Kri Ksiv, that it's written Shem Havaya, but we read a different word. That's how you read that word. The nafka bina being, if you're a Baal Koirei, are you allowed to sort of look out of the word while you're reading it? If it was a Kri Ksiv, you wouldn't have to see it, because it's a Kri. But if this is the way it's read, you need to be seeing it. In other words, that's the chiddush of the Brisker Rav. Anyway, now, v'gam b'nukudas adoy, and then noy dahainu ha'alef b'chatav patach. The aleph is not just a regular chata, not a regular patach, but a chatav patach. Avaloy b'patach levad, oy b'shva levad. So the patach under the aleph is a chatav patach. Now, we don't have a clear tradition how to pronounce the chatav patach, but it's not a patach alone. V'hadalad b'choilam, the dalad is a choilam. V'hanun b'kamatz, the nun is a kamatz. Not like many Sephardim pronounce it aleph dalad, and then they say nai. So they're making kodesh into choil, like Rabbeinu B'chai says famously in Parshas Vayira. V'yadgish hayud shetei nikaros yafe, emphasize the yud. Rak b'kavanna yechav nashim avaya. It's just that when you're mechavein, you should have in mind the Shem Havaya, v'tam ha-negino hu milra, and it has to be, you have to emphasize the last syllable, not Baruch atah Adoi and then Noi, but Adoi and then Noi. It's a milra. It's a milra. You say, what's the difference? There's no difference. Just one is right and one is wrong. That's the only difference. Okay? So that's the biggest difference you could have. Just like nobody wants to call, you're not going to call Rabbi Yeager. His name is Rabbi Yeager. So we're going to, it's the same thing with the name of Hashem. You got to pronounce it correctly. Fine. Says the Mishna Berura Kohen Gimel, Shahaya v'chulu, ubeber hagra kasav. Now, there's a very interesting and important machlokes between the Mechaber and the Gra. The Mechaber learns one is required to be mechavein to every single name of Hashem, b'chsivasai uvekriyasai. Comes the Gra, and the Gra says a leniency. The Gra says, look, me'ikar adin, you only have to be mechavin to the way it's read. Aleph dal nun yud. We always follow the reading. Certainly, though, there are great secrets in the writing. Except for levad b'kriya shema, sham tzarch lechaven gamkein haya hoive v'yiyah. Now, what does the Gra mean in Kriya Shema? Does it mean the first pasuk? Does it mean the first parsha? Does it mean the whole Kriya Shema? The words that are quoted by the Mishna Berura imply the entire Kriya Shema, me'ikar adin, you need to be mechavein, haya, hayveviyah. He doesn't say levad me pasuk rishain. Rav Moshe writes in a tshuva in Archaim Chelek Siman Hey that if you just think God, Hashem Yisbarach, then b'diavad you're yotzei. Now, where the writing, where the name of Hashem is written by Aleph Daled, according to everyone, you don't have to be mechavein, only that he's the master. In other words, this chumrah, we'll call it, of the mechaber, or the gra for Kriya Shema, does not apply when the name is written Aleph Dal Nun Yud. It's only when it's written Yud Ke Vav Ke. If one relates the kindness of God, in other words, let's say you say, we were making this campaign, and it was not an easy process, and Baruch Hashem, great miracles happened, and we were successful, b'siyata d'shmaya, and you want to say Hashem's name, u'metchila mazker Hashem. At first you said Hashem's name, and then you want to finish your words and say what God did for you. Asur l'hafsika b'dvarim. You can't interrupt. Does that mean you can't interrupt what you're saying, or others should not interrupt you? I guess it means even other people should not interrupt the guy. He might get distracted and he won't finish up. Now, certainly the implication though is that it is permitted to say, Aleph Daled Nun Yud did for me X, Y, and Z. Right? That's what the Mishna Berura is mashma. Us Ashkenazim, we're very scared too. We don't do that kind of thing, The Sfardim, they have more reverence, so they could take the chance. But we, we're not on such a high madrega, so we can't take such a chance. But at Meikar Din, it's permitted. You want to say, Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Yisparach Shemo, he did X, Y, and Z for me. He helped me get out of bed this morning. He helped me cross the street. So that's permitted. But let's say a guy wanted to curse someone, and he started by saying the name of Hashem, because, you're going to make better that he says levatala than he curses with the name of Hashem. Fine. Now, yesterday somebody asked, maybe Mendy, remind me, about whether it's sufficient maybe to say in the beginning of the day that you're mechavein, that all of your recitations of Hashem's name should be l'shem hayavaviyah and aleph dal nun yod Hashem adnos. So I'll tell you a few interesting things. Actually, this comes from the shiur that we gave on Adoi Noilam. The Matei Moshe brings in Ois Lamed Aleph that anyone who's mechavein for the tefillah of Adoi Noilam, he brings from Yehuda Achasav, Rav Haigon, Rav Shiur, that they are guarantors shetfilasai nishma'as, ve'in satan mekatreg al tfilasai, ve'in loy satan ufeg arab Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim betfilasai, ve'oivav noifel mefanav, ve'yeshamrim af yitzahara mashla mitai. So Adonai Olam is a very powerful tefillah. The Eishal Avram Abuchach in his Siddur Das Kedoshim Tefillah LeDavid, he brings that many say L'Shem Yichud many times a day, but if somebody wants to rely on saying one L'Shem Yichud for one mitzvah, that is sufficient. Yafeh Oiseh, like we say by Ksiva Sefer Torah or by Get, that if you're mechabin in the beginning, whatever you do stam follows afterwards. So the Eishal Avram brings v'nachel lefarish b'mamar rishon shemegala daita kol shayachos she'iloi l'mitzvah l'shaychos l'mitzvah b'chol hayoim, that everything is al das, the original kavan l'shem yichud. And he says, if God allows me to publish a siddur, I'll print a nusach, and then he publishes the following nusach: Harini mechavin me'ata al kol prat uprat mimasei v'dibura imachshavoisai shekol hayoim ad lamachar l'shem yichud. So basically, yeah, it's very nice to be mechavin that whatever you do is l'shem shemaim. I'm going to sleep l'shem shemaim. I'm eating l'shem shemaim. I'm playing with my kids l'shem shemaim. Whatever you do, but not everybody could be so oiske cheshbon. So in the beginning of the day, you say, whatever I do today should be l'shem shamayim. But then he adds, V'harini mechavin me'ata ad lamachar be'is hazois b'chol pam she'azker shem havaya hakadosh shehu b'ksivasi haya hoiva v'yeh u'v'kriyasei aleph dal nun yud, that shehu adoin koil. And when I say Elokim, I'm mechavin that it should be with the kavan of taka b'ayachos v'alakochos kulam. Bottom line is the Das Kedoshim formulated a nusach that you say once a day in the beginning of the day, that all of your recitations of God's name should be with that following Kavanna. And it's in the Sefer Afike Yam, which is one of the classic Sfarim of Lamdus, Rabbi Chil Michal Rabinowitz. He says, Inyan, in the back, they're Pnine Yam, Ois Gimel, Inyan Gadol Hu Lahasnois, Kisha Azker b'chol yom shem aleph daled nun yud, kavanasi shu adon koil, and if it's written yud kevavkei, kavanasi shu adon koil b'hoyav v'yeh, and when I say Elokim, it's I'm a chavin for both. The Tamei HaMinhagim, Ois Chavtefs, quotes from the Oyev Yisrael, the Aptarav, that's the function of Adonai Olam. When you say Adonai Olam, you're being moiser moida, that whenever you say the Shem Adnos, you're mechavin, that Hashem is Adonai Olam. And when you say the words V'loi ha'ois v'hamisra, that's the kavanah you're providing to every time you say Elokim. And when you say V'hu haya, V'hu hayveh, V'hu yiyeh b'sefara, that's the kavanah you're providing for the Shem Havaya. He quotes that from the Aptarav. In the Halicha Shlomo, he brings from Shlomo Zalman that why could you be soimech on this nusach that was composed, by the Eishal Avram Abuchach or the Afike Yam. I mean, these are recent individuals. He says because it's not found in Shas that one is required to have these kavanos, and it's, so to speak, maybe understood or implicit, but it was never sort of codified in the Talmud Bavli. Therefore, b'doreisenu hachalushim, where it's very difficult to mechavein, it's perhaps enough to say this tonight, and it would work for the rest of the day, says Rosh Zalman Arbach. But if you have one of those sidurim that they give it to you right there, so sometimes that helps. Other times, after you use the siddur for 3 days, you're already on autopilot. But it's probably a nice thing to say. You walk into shul in the morning, Hareini Mechavein. Then whenever I say Hashem's name, it should be v'kavana. Don't call Hayah V'yev. And whenever I say Elokim, it should be with the intention of Takif Ubalachas Valakochas Kulam. It takes about 5.5 seconds. And but Rav Moshe says, B'diavad, you should at least, when you're saying Hashem's name, realize you're talking to the one above. Okay, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for joining. Bracha v'atzlacha. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.